Hello, hello, welcome everybody.
Good morning, everybody. All right, let's start to get those cameras on. We're going to give our other attendees a few extra minutes to come on in so we can just do a little quick introductions, get to know who's in the room a little bit, some chit-chatting before 11:05. So let's go to Kenya. Kenya, you there? You got your mic?
Yes, I'm here. Just a second.
Okay, no worries. All right, perfect. How you doing today, Kenya?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm well, I'm well. So give me again, we want to know who's in the room. So what's your bar journey? Where you at? Did you just graduate, repeat taker? What's going on?
I just graduated and I'm preparing to take the bar in February. I think I'm going to wait till February.
Oh, okay. So you're doing like a three-step approach, right? Or a
Yes.
longer plan. Okay. Yeah, I'm a big fan of that, for different life circumstances or situations. That we all don't have to fit into the same, oh, let's just cram this into 10 weeks. So that's awesome. And so you're starting to study now and just kind of extending
Yes.
that through. Okay, cool.
Yes.
And how is studying going so far?
Well, I just graduated last weekend, so I haven't started yet.
Congratulations.
I'm developing a plan or strategy on how to accomplish success the first time.
Yeah, perfect. Congratulations. Where'd you graduate from?
Trinity Law School in California.
Nice. All right. So this session is going to be great for you, right? So you're going to be able to kind of be a bit in it, but also a bit fly on the wall, that you're not going to be in the pressure cooker that some of the other
Yes.
students are in.
Yeah.
So yeah, a lot of good lessons that you'll be able to pick up today. Glad to have you.
Thank you.
All right. Let's go to another one. We have Tracy. Tracy, are you got your mic?
Yes, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Mm-hmm. So what about you, Tracy?
I'm actually in the car. I had to run an errand. I was trying to get back. So everything's good, but I'm in the car, so that's why my camera's not on.
Got you. Okay. So yeah, where are you at in your bar journey? Did you just graduate, repeat taker?
I graduated last May, and I took in July, and I didn't pass, so I took in February. And I didn't pass for my jurisdiction, but I passed for other jurisdictions, so kind of in the middle.
Got you.
I plan to retake in July, this coming July. However, because I scored high enough for some jurisdictions, it's fine because I'm actually in the attorney honors program. So I only need a license in a jurisdiction. It actually doesn't matter because I'm a federal attorney. But
okay.
I want to retake because I almost feel like I'm not going to let it conquer me. You know what I'm saying?
It's personal at this point.
You know what I'm saying? It's personal now because I don't have my license, but it's the principalities of the whole
Yeah. I'm not mad at it. Okay.
So I'm in Pennsylvania, and Pennsylvania has one of the highest UBE scores in the country, along with Arizona, which is a 270. So and I'm only something like 5 points off. So like I said, it's personal now.
Yeah. Okay. Well, also glad to have you, Tracy. Thank you for sharing your story. And I love that energy around it, where I'm not going to let this beat me. I'm not going to let this get me down. So yeah, that's the nature of this bar exam. Many of us, unfortunately, fortunately, however you want to look at it, do have to take this multiple times. And so, yeah, we're in that boat and we're going to get it done. So again, glad to have you, and definitely think you'll be able to pick up some lessons today that'll help you on your journey. Awesome. All right. So as much as I would love to even call on one more student, I want to go ahead and make sure we can do everything on time today. So it's 11:05. So let's officially get started. And before we jump into any lessons, we have to do a quick moment of recognizing how this event came together. And it wouldn't be possible without our sponsors, BWL and Langston. So I'm going to pass it over to them. They could do a quick introduction on their organizations, and then we'll go from there. So Sarah, the mic is yours.
Thank you, DeAndre. Hey, welcome everybody. I don't want to take up a lot of time so that you guys can get into this great program, but I did want to welcome you on behalf of Black Women Lawyers of Los Angeles. This is a local organization if you're in Los Angeles we're happy to have you join. I will drop links in the chat about BWL and also our membership. So please feel free to copy and paste those and check those out later. I think my compatriot here is going to do the same for the John M. Langston Bar Association, but we are wishing you the best. Those of you that are taking the July bar and those of you that are even just getting that early prep in, that's great to see. And we hope that everybody is successful, and we feel really confident that DeAndre is somebody who can definitely help you with your bar studies. And this program today is going to build off of what some of you have already started doing with your Barbary lessons and things like that. If you're in some of these other bar prep programs. So this is going to build off of what you have already started working on, and just help you to, do even better and get some of those special tips that you can only get from DeAndre. So I'm going to turn it over to Jamila now. Go ahead, girl.
Awesome. Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Happy Saturday. I want to echo Sarah and DeAndre by saying welcome today. We're so happy that you have chosen yourselves today to come in and really learn some really good tools to take the bar. We're excited to hopefully welcome you over to this side. You are in the right place. I am the education co-chair of the Langston Bar Association. I'm a lifetime member. I'm also a lifetime member of Black Women Lawyers. I believe our president-elect, Tashiana Metters, is on the line as well. We are under currently the leadership of Melvin Felton. So on behalf of Langston, welcome. If you guys need anything, go to our website. I'll drop our link. Make sure you come to our activities. Reach out. We are a resource. So happy Saturday and happy studying.
And I'm muted. All right. Thank you. That was a wonderful word from our sponsors. And yes, just to add on and sprinkle a little extra salt and pepper on that. I've been to a lot of events for both BWL and Langston. And so great organizations to think about. And as soon as you're done with this exam, highly recommend signing up. It's just a great way that once you leave school to, one, be a part of organizations and committees, so you still get a little bit of that fun social interaction. But I think even more so with BWL and Langston being two that I know that have such good social causes, such good initiatives, where there's a good time being had, but also for good reasons. So yeah, definitely look into these orgs. The women and the men and the people in these orgs are great. They're great to be around. So yes, awesome. And thank you guys again for putting all this together. All right, so with that said, let's go ahead and jump into some bar prep. So this session, let me go ahead and get just a digital hand raise, for all those that are in the middle of bar prep right now, just so I can know for this next segment, right? Hanif is not listening to instructions already. I see you raise your physical hand. Hopefully you paying more attention in class than that. Okay, so all right. We got Safwan, Natalie, Hanif, Tracy. Okay, cool. And then we have some others maybe that are going through a prep, again, like we heard, that's more of a planned out for February or a future exam. So I want to start off by just getting a sense of where you're at, right? This first portion is going to be like, how is the first week going? A key to success in bar prep is being on track and understanding the pace of bar prep. And you want to get into that groove as quickly as possible. All right, so let's start off with Safwan. And am I pronouncing that correctly?
Yes, that's perfect. It's going well. For me, I started during the semester. I just graduated, and this is like, I'm going to take it in July. I'd started prep a bit earlier. Week one of prep was contracts.
Yeah.
A lot of the material I'd seen before. I think essays are the one thing I want to practice more of. But yes, it's going well. I don't know if that answered your question. But
okay, yeah, that's a good start. So I'm going to ask this to you, and then I ask the others to also put it in the chat so we can get a sense. Feel free to directly message me if you rather stay anonymous, but I encourage you all to, in this safe space, share, because we're all here to learn from each other and learn from me. But my question to you is, how is the study days looking so far, Safwan? Like, I've heard so many different approaches. You know, the old school approach that a lot of the practicing attorneys who are in here, we're used to the like 9 a.m. to 9 p.m., 10 p.m., et cetera. You hear a lot now of students also looking at this like a job of 9 to 5 and everything in between. So I'm curious to hear, you know, what you're doing, what everybody else is doing. So yeah, Safwan, can you tell me, what does your average study hours look like?
It depends. It sometimes a lot early in the morning. I am kind of an early bird, so it could be, before 6 a.m. that I start. 5:30 to 9:30, something like that, and then
Okay.
doing other things in the middle of the day and coming back to it in late afternoon. Or it could be a 9 to 5 type of thing, but usually I think about 8 hours is the goal.
Got it. So you're doing at least 8 hours, but then sometimes you're going over that. Okay. And then let's look into the chat and see what other people are saying. So we don't have any yet. So yeah, Tracy, Hanif, all those other students who are in it. I want to see how many hours on average are you putting in a day? It doesn't need to be perfect, but I want to get a gauge.
Hi, sorry, I can't really participate that much. I'm currently moving, so I
Okay.
can't like text, but yeah, I can talk really quick if you'd like, but I can't really participate too much.
Okay, sounds good. Yeah. If you want to, now that you're on the mic, you want to share what your average hours are looking like?
Yeah, so I mean, like you were saying, I've been treating it like a 9 to 5. Because I'm moving right now, I'm actually gonna make up for some of my lost time next week and kind of do like the 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. schedule. But lately, I've been like, from when I first started, I've been doing like 9 to 5 schedule. And then Saturdays and Sundays, it's kind of like a soft study day for me on the weekends. And
Yeah.
then during the week, it's like that's when it's straight through, focused on everything. Yeah.
And are you studying for the California bar exam?
No, I'm doing Maryland.
Okay, so you're doing the UBE. Okay, cool.
Yes.
And then, thank you. And then Hanif says in the chat, the study days are going well. My study days average about 6 to 8 hours. Okay. So, and then let's go to Hanif, and then I'll give my 2 cents on this. Hanif, how are you doing with these study days, right? Like, how are you doing with endurance? Yeah, are you lasting throughout the day? How's that looking?
So far, it's been really well. But we're going into the weekend. I mean, this is my first Saturday, Sunday. So the program said that we could take one day off, but I don't know if that is ideal, if I should just keep going every day straight through, but I don't know if that's gonna like lead to burnout later down the line.
And that's the tough thing. Okay, so here's going to be the first bit of advice that I give you all. Okay. First off, I do think depending on which exam you are taking, right, that can also dictate how many hours you're putting in and how hard you're studying. Because the reality is some exams are harder than others. So we all know that California is debatably, arguably one of, or the hardest bar exams in the country. We just had around like a 33% pass rate on this past February. July bumps up a little bit, but not by too many points. And for anybody who is a repeat taker, right, we all know that we don't want to be in this cycle of taking the bar longer than what we have to be. So there is always this idea of like, what's the bare minimum of time needed to pass any particular exam versus, am I going to be on the safe side? Kind of what you were mentioning, Hanif, where it's like, they're saying take a day off, but like, do I need to? Is it worth it? So what I encourage everybody to do is really kind of follow these essentially 2 rules of thumb. Number 1, right? Like, give as much as you can, go as hard as you can. And even wherever that is, try to push that just a little bit more to, again, be on the safe side. But in this age that we live in now, and again, this is not the 3-day bar that I was once taking. This is not the climate of the world and of being a student that it was when I was studying. And so there's a lot more focus on self-care. There's a lot more students and people coming into bar prep burnt out than I think there was before. And so with that said, like, you have to honor that other side, right? Because Hanif, to your point, it would be all counterproductive if by the time you get to the bar, you're just so burnt out that you can't demonstrate all that you learned in that time. So you're straddling that line, and you have to know yourself. So that first rule of thumb is to push yourself to your limits, right? But do so with caution. And then the second one is that give as much as you can, right? Like, remember that this is for those taking the July exam, you only have 10 weeks. So you want to give it your all, and you want to sacrifice. So that way you can walk out of the exam knowing you left everything on the table, and now it's in the grader's hands, as opposed to feeling immediately like, man, I could have did more. Man, I didn't review that one subject as well as I should have, and they just essay tested it, etc. Okay. So when I studied, just to give you my experience, again, it was more on that 10 to 12 hour range, right? And for all of those that don't know, like, I graduated law school at the top of my class. I graduated in the top 5%. I well averaged over a 3.8, 3.9 GPA. So for all intents and purposes, I was in a good boat to pass the bar exam on my first attempt. But even with that, again, I did not want to run the risk. So I went above and beyond and gave it my all. So that's the first on study hours and how we should approach that. And I guess the last thing I'll say too on it is that, like, again, I've seen, and I've personally helped so many students pass who have not put in the 10 to 12 hours, which is why, again, it's not necessarily mandatory. I've seen people who have worked full time and have passed on their first attempt. I've seen people who've worked during a repeat taking attempt and have passed, so there is a range, right? And again, it's just how much do you want to leave up to chance? All right, so let's go into the next question and seeing how bar prep is going and making any adjustments. Has anybody fell behind in the schedule yet? Okay, and so we'll start off with Hanif on this one. Hanif, like, bar prep moves fast. So how are we doing so far with just like staying the schedule? Has any assignment already kind of slipped into the need to do later category, or no, we're checking all the boxes and we're doing well?
Yeah. Yeah, we're checking all the boxes every day. That's like
Okay.
my bare minimum goal. Yeah.
Good. All right. Sounds good. So then I'll open it up to anybody else. And if you're going to talk, please raise your digital hand and then I'll call on you. But yeah, has anybody fallen behind in schedule yet? So we can talk about, how to approach that. Okay. First week looks like, or first or second week, everybody's on schedule. That sounds good. Let me ask another question. Hanif, are you going through any measures in your studying of creating outlines from scratch, creating flashcards from scratch, anything like that?
Definitely creating outlines, but I have flashcards from other companies.
Resources.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we could talk about that too, about information from various companies, because there could be a pitfall with that. But let's talk about the outlining, or both of them. So I want you to be careful, Hanif, and everybody, when it comes to outlining and or making flashcards from scratch, because those are extremely time-consuming study activities. All right. It takes a lot of time to outline and make those, write it, type it, et cetera, and make flashcards. And the juice may not be worth the squeeze. All right. So because those things are so time consuming, even if they haven't, bit you in the butt yet, chances are, as you get deeper into bar prep and you're layering in more classes that you have to learn and review, that outlining can slow you down. So I remember specifically, right? I'm so used to outlining. I loved outlining. And so first week was contracts, and I attempted to re-outline all of contracts, even though my bar prep company gave me an outline. And what I quickly realized is like, all right, I'm just simply not going to have time to do this. And I had to make that adjustment. So again, it sounds like nobody here is, but if anybody is in fact outlining, just keep that in mind. And Hanif, what you can do, and everybody, what you can do when it comes to flashcards and outlining, you don't have time to outline the entire subject for all the subjects you must learn. But if there are certain tough topics within those subjects, certain areas that are very in depth that you have to learn, you can do like mini outlines for certain sections, just because that activity of doing so is going to help you better understand it. So you can do some spot outlining in flashcards. And then I'm trying to think of the next thing you said. Oh, the information overload kind of issue, or the resource overload. So Hanif, have you yet realized, because this is pretty common in some of the big box companies, and I'm aware that you're taking Themis, have you yet come across seeing rules different, right, within that collection of resources, right, for the same exact topic? So to make it more tangible, let's say offer. You see offer and it has one rule, one place, but then the rule might be slightly different somewhere else. Have you come across that yet?
Yes.
Yeah. So I want to just mention this both within your own company that you're using, if that's the case, and definitely if you're bringing in other resources. The reality is no bar exam puts out, this official book of here are the rules for the bar exam, right? So what you're left with is then a little bit of creative freedom, right, that companies, bar prep professionals, et cetera, have in making their rules, because there is no single body of rules to use. Now, as good as that is for both bar prep professionals and companies and students, and that there's no like rigid required way to write it, what that can also create for students is a bit of overwhelmingness of like learning rules in all these different formats and structures. And so realize that now, everybody, and make sure when you see a rule, right, in a certain way, pick one early and choose that, hey, this is then my version of the rule that I'm going to be using. But if you go through bar prep constantly kind of being inundated with all these different rules and ways of saying it, it's going to be harder to memorize, right? Because you're thinking of this all as like patterns. So if you're seeing a different pattern each time, it's going to take longer to memorize that. So keep that in mind. And so, Hanif, when you have flashcards from critical past, or you have outlines from here, or you have this essay book and this bar prep company and all those rules, just be careful of that and staying, clear with, all right, here's my main source for my rules. All right, let's see what else we have. All right, let's talk next about study environment. All right, and so I'm gonna go with cameras on. And so Safwan, back to you. What's your study environment looking like? Because that's very important in bar prep, and a big part of success is having an environment that's non-distracting, promotes you getting the most out of your hours. So yeah, give me a little insight on that.
During the week, it is at the law school library. Even though I'm graduated and technically not a student there anymore, we still have access, and it's 24-hour access. So that's where most of my study environment is.
Perfect. So library, and I think that's a good one, right? Library doesn't promote a lot of opportunity for distractions or getting involved in other things. Are you studying at home at all, Safwan?
Sometimes for the more passive things, yes. Like UWorld questions I can do from home. They're short enough that they don't require as much attention. They do require a certain amount, but yeah, sometimes, but not as much.
Got you. And then Hanif, how about you? Are you studying at home at all?
Yes, I mainly study at home.
Got it. Okay, so we're on the other end of the spectrum here. So how is that going? And have you kind of, study proofed your environment to where you are staying locked in and not distracted?
Yeah, so I live alone, so I kind of have quadrants. So like my living room is my study zone. So if I'm here at this desk, I know it's study time. But if I'm like not at this desk, then that's when I'm like doing other things.
Yeah. And so that's really good, everybody, right? So like that's one of the big things we learned since COVID of like, if we're using our living space as also a workspace, it's really good to build in his words, quadrants, right? Intentional spaces for intentional activities. And so that way they don't bleed into each other, right? You want to avoid, working on the couch, because the couch is also where you relax. You want to avoid working in the bed because the bed is where you sleep. So that's really good to hear. And are you then doing a good job, right? Because I'm imagining, right, those quadrants from how you describe, they're probably close to each other. So are you doing a good job of avoiding just turning around and turning on that TV or going to that refrigerator a few more times than what we might need to do? Yeah, how's that going?
Yes, I think right now because of the nerves, I'm very locked in. But if I felt like it was becoming too much of a distraction, then I live on campus, so I would just go straight to the library.
Perfect. So you have the option. There you go. And so, yeah, to each his own, right? Everybody's going to work different in different environments. And so Hanif has the structure, right? Clearly with the quadrants, he has the discipline for this to be effective. And when so, it could be a good time saver, right? To be able to wake up, get dressed, and then boom, get straight to it, as opposed to having any commute. So everybody should evaluate their study environment and what improvements they need to make, if any, because again, it can make a big difference if you're not locked in that environment. Me personally, I cannot study at home, right? When I was in bar prep, it was just too much for me. I was, again, in the fridge all the time. All of a sudden, I have to use the bathroom like 5 times as opposed to if I'm in the library, I'm barely going. So everybody figure out what's best for them. Okay, and let's do one more question, and I'll leave this one open-ended, or open to a volunteer, I should say. Let's talk about the holy trinity of law school, okay? And Kenya, I'm not going to pick on you just because you went to Trinity Law School, but when I refer to the holy trinity of bar prep, I'm referring to eat, sleep, and exercise. Okay, these are way more important than some of us may think during this 10-week process. I consider bar prep and a 10-week course to be a lot like marathon training. Like, this is intensive, and it's a mental marathon. And there's a physical component to it as well, because your physical body has to make it through and be ready to perform on that day. So we have to take care of ourselves. So with that, I'll open it up to any volunteer to get started. And again, be as honest and vulnerable as possible. How is your eat, sleep, and exercise looking during this bar prep study period? All right. You know, if nobody talks, I have to call on somebody. So Kenya, I know you're doing a February approach, but I'm curious to hear, right? How are you going so far with your eat, sleep, and exercise as you begin to get, or what is your thought process even on how you're going to take care of your eat, sleep, and exercise in the middle of bar prep?
Like Elizabeth just mentioned, I definitely could do better. I don't have anything planned. As a matter of fact, when you said that, it made me think that maybe I should develop something. I didn't realize how much it was involved in making sure that this is a part of my success story. So I will have to develop something.
There we go. Good. I'm happy I'm planting the seed so you can see the importance. Let me tell you why this is one, right? Let me tell you some of the horror stories that I've seen, right? Back when I was in bar prep, there was a student that was in the program with me, and he was sleeping like 3 to 4 hours a day, right? Just going crazy studying for this exam and all the anxiety associated with it, to the point where he was extremely burnt out by the end of the 10 weeks, to where he underperformed and did not go on to pass, right? We need sleep to function. When you get to the day of the exam, a lot of your performance is based off of your practice, but if you're not sharp, right? If you're not mentally sharp and ready, it's going to be hard to navigate that. You know, we all know what that feels like when our brain is just moving a little bit slower than what we would like. So sleep throughout this entire process was going to be something very good. And then eating just affects on a very small level the day-to-day, which adds up to affecting it on a big level. Okay. So Kenya, let's go ahead and just like throw them out there. What are some foods that are probably going to be bad to eat during the middle of a study day? Foods that are likely to give us the itis, right? Give us the food coma.
Carbohydrates, definitely.
The carbs, exactly. So we want to avoid during lunchtime the fries, the burgers, the pasta, right? All these things that are carb heavy, because we know that's going to give us a spike of energy, and then we're going to crash. We're going to hit that wall and be like, I can't study anymore. And we don't want that. So what do you think, Kenya, would be some ideal lunch options to keep us going throughout the day?
Maybe high protein.
Yep. High protein, some vegetables, right? Exactly. Lean, easy on the digestive system, and you keep going. So yeah, I mean, at this point, right, we're all aware of self-care and health, especially at this age. And so it goes without saying the importance of diet, just in general, but definitely again through this marathon, right? No, I don't see anybody, again, marathon training for the actual marathon having a bad diet, right? You're a little conscious of that, and you're eating in a way that's promoting your success. All right. And then what's the last one? Exercise. Okay. So let me go back to Hanif. Hanif, I know you like to work out. What is your workout schedule looking like in bar prep so far?
Not good. I haven't worked out in like 2 weeks. It's bad.
Oh,
I
that's not, them
know.
biceps
I
is mad
know.
at you right now.
It's not good at all.
Okay, so what's the plan? Like, do you have a goal of what you want to incorporate?
Yes. So now that the first week is over, I plan on going back to the gym starting tomorrow.
Okay.
Um, I have this bad habit of being like very one track minded. So like this was the new thing, bar prep, and so like all my mind was thinking about was bar prep, and so like the
Yes.
gym went out of the way. But like I know I need to exercise.
Good. So Hanif already appreciates the importance of exercise, something that's already a habit for him. First week, it was just getting, situated and acclimated to this new bar prep world, which I appreciate. I think it's not a bad idea. All right, take 1 week off, but now I'm going to get back into it. So, right, I think there's going to be people on different ends of the spectrum here, people who haven't been working out at all. And I recommend that you start doing something, and I'll talk about what that can look like. But I also want to talk about people like you, Hanif, who have a habit of working out. And let me ask you, how long is your average workout when you're
Anywhere between an hour and 2 hours.
Exactly. I figured as much, right? For those that would like to work out, anywhere from an hour to 2 hours. And I want to suggest that we avoid those 2 hour workouts, right? Like, this is not the summer of, the focus is my six pack, right? This is not the summer of like the best beach body that I've had, or the summer of, getting into necessarily the best physical shape that I've been. Hanif, what is this the summer of?
Oh, this is summer passing the bar.
This is the summer of passing the bar, right? So we all know in life, you have to choose your priorities. You can't have it all. So this is the top priority, and we have to work backwards from that. So with that said, I'm going to give you what my workout regimen was. Again, feel free to tweak to your schedule, your situation, your circumstances. Some of us have certain health reasons why we have to work out more or less or whatever it may be. But I'm going to give you what I did, which was I did 30-minute exercise every single day. Okay. So I never did an hour, but I also never really missed a day. And my 30-minute exercise, I also strategically used it at any point in the day in which I was hitting a wall in studying, right? We're all going to hit that fatigue at some part in the day. It's natural. We won't take as many steps to avoid it, but you're going to hit it. So let's say it was 3 o'clock. I'd say, you know what, time to get that little 30-minute workout. So I would go run, jog, maybe do some push-ups, some sit-ups. And here's the other thing too, like, I don't know about you guys, but when I work out really, really hard, that also drains me. I'm also then really tired, right? So I'm also not doing a very, very strenuous exercise regimen either. I'm doing, again, like a walk, a jog for a mile or two for me. And then I'm doing some push-ups, some sit-ups, some squats, like, all right, cool, I'm ready to go back. All right. But avoid those strenuous workouts where it's just like, all right, all I want to do is sit and relax. Like, you don't want to be walking into the living room the next day, Hanif, like the glutes are just sore. You can't sit comfortably in your chair all day because you just burned them too hard. So let's keep, again, all the priorities in mind. All right, so we're going to now transition into some actual content and focus on some actual law next. But as we leave this segment of bar prep and all the intangibles and adjusting to the schedule and adjusting to the demands, any other questions that anybody has regarding this category before we move on? Yeah, Safwan.
So this might be kind of a late question, but how does this work, the Legally Fit session that we're doing here? When I first, a professor told me about this link, it said something like, this is a recurring meeting. Can you just explain like what we're doing here?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And excuse me for not giving you more clarity on that, because I'm sure people came in from different resources or different paths to land into this session. So first off, Legally Fit is a company that I started 10 years ago after graduating, and it's designed to help students succeed in law school and pass the bar exam. And right now, we are currently, as we do every year, every bar prep administration, we offer a 10-week bar prep course where students have signed up for. And just as any course that you may be taking, Themis, bar, Recaplan, et cetera, we have our own program with materials, et cetera. Now, for this summer, in addition to having our own 10-week program, we're also doing collaborations, as we are here with BWL. in Langston to offer some resources to bar takers. And then also internally, we're having what we're calling this, summer of your bar prep buddy. So through social media and email, we'll be giving out free resources and free just tidbits on how to make your journey go smoother no matter which company you're taking. So today's session is the first one that we're doing. And again, this one's in collaboration with BWL and Langston. And our focus today is what's the adjustment to bar prep that we need to make? How, are we in our groove? How do we get into our groove? And then now we're about to transition into essay writing. And I'm going to be sharing some legally fit strategy now that you guys can take into your next week and beyond. Sound good? Perfect. All right. And then also for all those just to note, at the end of this session, we'll be doing a nice little contracts quiz. All right. Even for, I know we got some BWL and Langston in the building. I would love for you guys to do the quiz too, to see how much you guys remember. But the winner, of course, will be one of our bar prep students. We're going to do a 20-question contracts review quiz that if you've gone through contracts, you should be able to answer these questions. This is establishing your foundational understanding of contracts. And the person who answers the most accurately and the fastest will be the winner, and you guys will receive 1 free hour of legally fit tutoring coaching that you can use during your bar prep. Okay, so that'll be at the end of the session. All right, so it's time to jump into our essay writing strategy. All right, so let me go ahead and bring up this presentation. Okay. Kenya, can you give me a thumbs up, letting me know that that is visible, everything is good there? All right, cool. So first off, introduction to bar essays. We're in the middle of bar prep at this point, so I'm going to fly through this. Some of us may still be starting our journey, so we'll go through it, but let's go through this quickly. So first off, how long do you have to complete a bar essay versus law school? Law school, it can be anywhere from 1 to 3 hours to do an essay. On the bar exam, you have 1 hour if you're taking California. You have 30 minutes if you're taking the UBE. Okay, so it's good to get comfortable with this new formatting, and it's consistent. In law school, you saw variance. In the bar, it's going to be consistent. Okay, next, length of fact pattern. So the average fact pattern in law school, again, could vary by professor, anywhere from 1 to 5 pages. On the bar exam, and this is for both California and UBE, it's typically around 1 page. On those UBEs, you'll see a lot more half a pages even. And even on the California, sometimes half a page or so. The one we're going to do today is about half a page. So anywhere from a half a page to a full page. So you don't have as much to read. But that does mean that a lot of the facts are important. So make sure you have strong reading comprehension. We'll talk about that. Style of writing, okay? In law school, you had to use IRAC tailored to each professor. On the bar exam, you have to use IRAC tailored to the bar exam. So overall, your success is going to come down to 2 things: you knowing the law and you understanding and knowing the exam. And that's where exam strategy comes in. But realize that part of your journey is focusing on just that. You have to see the patterns and the style in which these answers are expected to be written. So that way you're fitting within the mold that is expected of you, not bringing in your own personal characteristics, unique style, right, that you may have adopted from one of your professors, etc. So make sure you're learning the exam and learning how to fit in. You don't want to stand out here. You want to fit in. Okay. So let's talk about the components of essay success. Here's what you're going to need to do well on the essay portion of the exam. It starts off with a strong understanding of the law. You can't do anything on the bar exam, right, at least the current format, without understanding the law. The essay and the MBE are going to require that of you. All right, so after you have that foundation, okay, you do then have this other 50% that's made up of these different skills. That is then further split into core skills and intangible skills. So let's look at these core skills first. Reading comprehension, right, meaning that you're being able to actually understand what's going on. You're not making up facts. You're not including more facts. You're clearly getting the story. You're clearly seeing what the issues are, why people are upset, etc. Next is issue spotting, right? So now can you take that reading comprehension of understanding your problem, understanding the scenario, and then be able to actually trigger the relevant areas of law that will help provide solutions for this problem, right? So issue spotting is connecting the topics of law to the scenario. Then you have to organize and outline your discussion in an acceptable manner. You can't just throw the kitchen sink at the exam and expect to get always a good score. So we want to give some thought to, how am I going to articulate this in a clean, organized, concise manner? Next, you have to have rule memorization, right? The quick rule of thumb here is focus on rule memorization last. If you do all the other things in bar prep that you're supposed to do, you should be working and improving your memorization kind of in the background, right? So we'll talk more about that as we go through the session, but I want you to focus more on understanding the law, understanding the exam. Let the rule memorization come. Thorough analysis. You have to know how to squeeze out all of the points. If you are going through an essay, if you've ever done this in law school or on the bar for some repeat takers, where it's like, hey, I feel like I crushed that. And then you get your score back and it was not as high as you thought it was. Chances are you didn't have a thorough analysis, right? Because even if you spot all the issues, right? You had good reading comprehension, you felt good, but you just left points on the table because you didn't use the facts. You didn't thoroughly flesh out those discussions. That's going to be a reason why you don't score as high as you'd like. So thorough analysis is important. And then lastly, of course, we have to have conclusions consistently. All right, let's take a look at these intangible skills, and let's just like talk about a few of them. Let me go back to my chat. So Safwan, on this list of intangible skills, which one is intriguing you the most, right? Of like, oh, okay, I'm curious about that one, or oh, I think I need to work on that one. So which one is intriguing and why?
Handling curveballs, because that's something I hope I don't have to do. I've heard, legend has it, about 10 years ago, they put a CalCiv Pro essay on the California bar exam. And that had not been there for many years before that. Hasn't happened many times since then. So for a lot of people who maybe didn't focus as much on it, it would have been a curveball. But yeah, that's interesting to me. Like, maybe the best way to handle that is to prepare for it. But interesting.
So here we go. So great. So what you referred to was really like a big subject curveball, right? Where it's like, oh, California Civ Pro, they rarely do this, but they happen to throw that on here. So what I'm referring to here, and what is very likely, and what I like to say is happens at least once every bar administration, is that there's a topic curveball, where it's something that you haven't necessarily seen in law school, something that you might not have studied a lot in your bar prep materials, but yet it showed up on the exam. And so now you're in a position where you have to figure this out on the spot, right? And either it's a curveball topic, or it could be a curveball scenario. The other reality of why we do so many practice questions is to be exposed to the common patterns. But even just in this past exam, I would say the curveball exam was the contracts exam. And they gave just a unique scenario that was not common, that you had to take a second to think through, how am I going to handle this? So when it comes to handling curveball, Safwan, the message here is that be prepared for them. And really what it comes down to is who's going to panic versus who's going to use logic to work their way through this. That's really what the test becomes then at that point, right? Because the bar is aware of what is commonly tested in the outlines, right? They know formation, everybody knows that. They know everybody knows this and that. And they know when they're giving something like California Civ Pro, for example, where it's like, oh, this is going to throw people off. So again, it's like, expect more variance in student answers, but it's who took a second to pause and handle that with logic, as opposed to spiraling or panicking. And just to give you a quick example of the one on my exam back in 2014, Safwan, did you take criminal procedure in law school?
I did, yes.
Okay, cool. Did you learn anything specifically about the right to represent yourself pro se, like the particular rules on when and how a person can represent themselves in court?
I don't think so.
Yeah, I didn't. And I definitely didn't also get it in my bar prep materials. But guess what? On the day of the exam, one of the last calls of the question in my Crim Pro question was, can this person represent themselves in this lawsuit? And I'm like, oh, right? That was a curveball. And again, that wasn't like the bulk of the exam. It wasn't like, or the bulk of even that question, but it's something that you had to handle. Don't panic. Don't avoid it. Use some logic and work your way through. All right. So that's handling curveballs. Let's do one more, and let's go back to Tracy. So Tracy, which intangible skill speaks out to you and why? And then I'll give you some tidbits on it. Okay, let's come back to Tracy. Oh.
I would say I was listening to what you were saying about the curveballs, but you know, finessing the rule statement, definitely finessing the rule statements because, you know, I'm not good with memorization, but
Yeah,
I know what I'm talking about, right?
yeah.
So it's like, listen, I might not say exactly what, formation is, but I'm going to explain it to you. And I know what I'm talking about, right? So
So Tracy,
that's my problem.
yes, exactly. I'm happy we're addressing that as a problem. And let's be clear, I don't think that's a problem in general, right? But I do think it's a problem for the bar exam. It's a problem that the bar exam is trying to address and change with the future of the bar exam and how it's not going to be based off of so much memorization. But the reality is that the current exam that we have and we face, it really requires you to have rule memorization. And that needs to be your primary, right, attack plan, is that I will have these down. And here's why. A stronger and accurate and full rule promotes a strong, full, and accurate analysis. Because if you're finessing your rule statement, you're then not staying connected to a full, accurate rule in order to analyze. So things in your analysis can then end up falling through the cracks. So here's the generic, tidbit on finessing rule statements to give it cleanly. Everybody should focus on memorizing as well as they can, as many rules as they can. And again, that's your primary, super important. On the day of the exam, I would hope that you can, on the essay portion, that you can verbatim memorize at least 80% of those rules that you're going to be writing out. Now, the reality is that in my world, right, there's probably the anomalies, but almost every student is going to have certain rules that they don't verbatim remember on the day of the exam. And that is also okay, which is why you want to have this skill for finessing rule statements. And so, Tracy, for somebody like you, it sounds like you're on the opposite end of this. Some people struggle with finessing a rule statement when they don't remember it, right? Some students will say, I can't remember what the rule is. And then they don't really have just yet the skill to be able to go off of their understanding. Where you're on the other end of that spectrum, you're like, I already have comfort in that. That's what I'm used to. I know how to do that. Well, so now I need you to work on the actual memorization, and that's the skill you want to work on. So that should give the clarity around rule statements and the expectation that we should all have come the day of the exam. All right, so there's other intangible skills. We'll have other workshops. So for time purposes, we'll continue to move through this because we want to actually go through a contracts essay together. But yeah, those are the other list of intangible skills. Feel free to write them down, think through them on your own. Some of them are pretty self-explanatory. And also stick around for questions if there's anything burning at the end of all this. All right, so let's next go into the most common issues with essays and what some of those solutions are. We're gonna go through this pretty quickly as well, so feel free to take a screenshot if you're joining us on Zoom here, and you can review this later. So first problem is a subpar understanding of the law. Okay, that's the number one thing, right? It's hard to issue spot and analyze the law if you don't actually understand it and memorize it. So learn the law. And there's a lot of egos in our space, right? And a lot of us, from my experience, think we have a better understanding of the law than we actually do. So be very humble to this process. Be very realistic and real with like, okay, like how good is my understanding? And you have constant ways to assess the strength of that through quizzes, through doing practice essays and receiving scores, through multiple choice questions, etc. So we'll even see a little bit of that today for all those that make it to the end of the session. We'll be doing a contracts review to see how well you guys are holding on to all that contracts information. So next is poor reading comprehension. This is like, to me, the X factor of performance on the bar exam. A lot of companies don't stress the importance of reading comprehension, but this you 1000% need on every portion of the exam. You need it on the PT, you need it on the essay, and you need it on the multiple choice. If you cannot correctly and quickly pick up the scenario and what's going on and process things, it's going to make it more difficult to, one, accurately analyze and or do so in the time conditions that you have. So we all have, again, our starting point with all of these various skills. make sure you're just aware that reading comprehension is important and you're assessing how you're doing and looking to take certain steps at improving. One of the easiest ways to improve your reading comprehension is just to focus on it and to slow down, right? If you find yourself making up additional facts or missing keywords and sentences, slow down and try to decrease the number of times that happens. And then lastly, we talked about this already, leaving points on the table. You have to thoroughly analyze. You got to use the facts. You got to squeeze out those points, okay? Some more issues. You can't organize your discussion. I know what to talk about and I'm here, but like, I don't know how to write this out. I don't know where to start. Usually that's a problem of you didn't do enough practice exams to get exposure on having an attack plan for that type of scenario. That is the importance of doing practice essays, and a lot of them, right? Different companies have different regimens and requirements for how many practice questions you do. I recommend that everybody does at least 2,200 multiple choice questions, at least 7 to 8 PTs, and at least 100 essays, right? You don't have to write all of those out, but you're at least looking at 100 essays. You can't timely articulate your thoughts. Very similar to can't organize your discussion. This again comes down to doing enough practice. And remember, this is all about fitting in the mold. So our whole legal system is based off of precedent, right? Like we use previous decisions to guide us in future scenarios that are similar. Well, you're doing the same thing on the bar exam. You're using past exams and past answers and arguments to your benefit. You want to, when you're studying, see those, save those, and then reuse them when applicable, okay? Can't tell you how many times, right? A student will come to me after taking Legally Fit, they'll take the bar and they'll be like, oh my gosh, essay question number 3 on the bar was just like that homework essay we did in class, right? And it's like, okay, great. Hopefully you remembered what we did and how we approached that, and you did something similar, right? That's why you do practice. And then lastly, time management, right? This is one of those like deadly killers on the bar exam where you could do everything right, but if your time management is off, you're getting a low score, right? So let's say Tracy studied her butt off, put in the hours, understood the law. She did enough exposure. She had attack plans for every area of the law. But then it came to the day of the exam, essay question number 1, she's typing it out and she's just a little too comfortable. She's not keeping that pace. And then all of a sudden she finishes essay 1 over by 10 minutes, right? Well, then now that's bleeding into question 2. And then now we're in panic mode and now we're just in salvation mode for the rest of this portion of the exam. And everything is kind of, right, you know, SHIT has hit the fan. So you don't want to be in that position. And so time management is key throughout this. Okay. All right. So let's now start to get into the Legally Fit strategy as far as the pre-writing phase. Okay. But first off, there are 2 phases to every essay. There's the pre-writing and the writing phase. Pre-writing is all about your setup to the exam. Okay, writing phase is when you're actually then going through writing it out. This is just like, I would say anything else in life, right? Cooking, sports, etc. Tracy, do you like to cook at all? No?
Nope.
No cooking at all for Tracy. How about you, Hanif? You like to cook at all, man?
No, I'm with Tracy. No
Okay,
cooking
we're
for
gonna
me.
stop with the cooking example. Clearly, nobody in here likes to cook. So let's go back to working out then. Let's go with Hanif on working out because this applies to so many things. So Hanif, what's like before you start really getting into it and pumping that iron or doing any kind of strenuous work, what is important for you to do first?
Oh, you need a plan. You need to have eaten beforehand. If you want to do a pre-workout or whatever, you have to plan before. You can't just go in.
Exactly. How about also then warming up, which could include just like warming up the muscles and or stretching,
Stretching,
right?
yeah.
Things like that. All those things, right? It's like not what we're here for, but it's a part of the success that we're going to have, right? A lot of us in life with these types of preparation phases, we like to skip past them and get to whatever the, fun part of it is or what we think is the most valuable. But you can't underestimate the preparation. And so it's the same thing with the bar exam. So many students try to rush into writing that they skip through this too fast and they don't set themselves up for success. So that's what we're going to be talking about today is how to set yourself up for success, what to do before you even start writing. And for me, let me tell you, like, to me, the first 15 minutes of an essay are the most important 15 minutes, because after that, I'm in autopilot. I'm putting in a lot of my hard work and thinking in that first 15 minutes. So pre-writing phase, for short, in the legally fit world, we like to call this RSOD. RSOD, RSOD as the mnemonic to remember it. These are the 4 things you want to do, right, as you're preparing to write. First, read the question with intention. 2, stop and think. I know most people's moms in here told them, right, you better think before you talk. In this case, on the bar exam, you got to think before you write. If you move too quickly, you're more prone to make mistakes. Next, you want to outline. Okay, a lot of us sometimes will skip this step. Like, okay, I got it. Let's just jump into it. But then guess what? You're 30 minutes or halfway through this, writing this essay, and you're like, what do I talk about next? Right? You need a blueprint for yourself that you just follow throughout the exam, so that way it's completely laid out. And then lastly, you have to determine your strategy. We'll talk a little bit more about that when we get to it. So let's go through each one. First, read the question with intention. I'm going to take a step back on the slide, and I want to actually talk through this. And I want to hear from one of you all. Let's go with Safwan. Safwan, when you read an essay question, right? Like, kind of tell me, like, what is your objective? What is your mind focused on in that initial read? Like, what's going on?
Call the question. I've made the mistake enough times of talking about remedies when you didn't need to. And it's very frustrating when that happens, but hopefully I've learned that lesson.
Yeah,
so that's where my mind is mostly focused on. And from there, I think there are keywords that I look for, such as, there are a lot of traps that come up frequently. If there's an agreement that I'll take care of you until you die, the rest of your life, that's a trap that hopes to make people write about the statute of frauds and why it applies, but it actually doesn't. So that's the kind of stuff I'm focusing on.
Okay, I like those things, right? I'm going to give you a slightly different approach, but that was very clear, and I appreciate that. So you're looking at the call of the question to make sure I really know what's going on here. And then after that, you're reading the question and you're really focused on looking out for the traps. Like, I know you guys like to trap me, and let me extract as many of those as I can. And I think that's very important. And I'm going to share what I think should be the primary focus, but I think those are very important. And then let's do one more. Hanif, anything different for you when you're reading through an essay? What is your mindset? Is there anything else that is, as you would articulate, your focus during that initial read?
No, I think that this is about it. I mean, sometimes I jump the gun and I'm just like very anxious to start writing, but
yes,
I really do have to slow down.
Yeah. Okay. So let me go ahead now and add in my 2 cents in this different approach, Safwan and everybody, on my mindset. And this was a developing mindset for me that I developed during bar prep, and now I've been practicing and showing others how to do it for 10 years. When I was in bar prep, I realized hey, I could take a different approach as to how I look at these questions. A lot of us will be in bar prep, in law school, et cetera, and we're so aware of the fact that we are studying or taking the bar exam that we're treating this fact pattern as just kind of like an exercise, right? And so with that, we have a mindset where we're just solely focused on and obsessing over spotting the issues as quickly as possible. And some of us even have the obsession of, as we spot the issues, trying to analyze the outcome of those issues as we're reading. We want to know who's going to win. We want to know who's going to be right or wrong, right? And so what I learned, and it was so beneficial, was that I had to put those obsessions to the side. I have to be comfortable being in that space of not knowing that, and knowing that if I follow all my steps, all of that will reveal itself. So what I started doing, Safwan, was I started looking at these fact patterns as if I was an attorney and somebody was coming into my office and they were telling me what happened, right? Because as an attorney, that's what your job is going to be. Somebody's going to come to you. Here's the problem. You're going to have to listen to that and then assess, here are the things I'm going to look into as possible solutions for this issue, right? And so translating that to this exam, everybody, the mindset that I want to encourage you guys to experiment with is one in which you are using your initial read, right, as a primary purpose of just getting situated and clearly understanding the facts and what the problems are, right? And then as you'll see with this 4-step approach, you'll take steps into actually outlining, okay? So let's go ahead and jump into the text here on read the question with intention. So as you see here, the primary goal, number 1, is to connect with the facts, humanize the fact pattern, reread sentences or paragraphs as necessary, and use the left margin to write down 1 to 2 word summaries of each paragraph. And when I say write down 1 to 2 word summaries, I'm not talking about like relevant areas of the law, like literally just reading comprehension. This was the paragraph where they met. This is the paragraph where DeAndre tried to get out of the deal. This is the paragraph where he sued, right? Like just literally, what is the paragraph about? Now, number 2, and this one's important, jot down potential issues. So, Safwan, what is natural and is expected is as your primary focus is just taking in the facts, connecting with them, your brain's going to be working and it's going to be seeing certain buzzwords, certain traps, certain issues come up, right? But here's the approach that I want you to take. As those come up, I want you to kind of have the mindset of having a brain dump as those come up. So you're reading through an essay and revocation pops in your head as a possible issue here. Instead of thinking of revocation and then thinking, is this a revocation? And like going deep down the analysis of that, I want you to simply write revocation down on your right-hand margin. And by you writing it down, you're temporarily releasing revocation. So now you can get back in the mindset of catching as many other issues as possible. Because if we get tunnel vision just for revocation, we have a chance of missing the acceptance issue or the consideration issue, et cetera. So think of yourself, everybody, as like, you know, search and rescue. And right, as soon as you find the first person, you can't celebrate, you can't like, you know, spend too much time with that one person. You got to get them to a place of temporary safety. You got to go back into the house and get as many other people as possible. Okay. So that's your approach. Don't obsess over analysis, right? You want to put it down and then stay with the fact pattern and see how many issues can you find. Okay. And as we move on to that next section, so Safwan, are we seeing kind of the difference? Are we connecting with that difference in the approach? Yeah, awesome. Okay, so after you finish reading the question, right, the idea is that, again, like you should not have all the issues that you're going to discuss. There's no pressure to have it at that stage, but you should have a very good understanding of what's going on and a few ideas. The stop and think is the next step in identifying the rest of the issues. So I want you to ask yourself, why are the parties upset and what do they want? Okay, so this is a very, very powerful question. And let me unpack this. Let me give you a quick little mini example. All right, I, let's say, have a house in Hawaii, and I'm not at my house very often in Hawaii because I'm living in Los Angeles. Safwan is listening to this session and is aware of that. So he decides to go and live in my Hawaii house without my knowledge, okay? And 5 years has gone by of him living in my house. And then now I realize this and I want to kick him out. And he's like, I'm not leaving. Boom, that's the scenario. Safwan, why are the parties upset and what do they want? Very easy, but also could be difficult question to ask and answer, but go ahead and give it a shot. Why are both me and you upset and what do we want?
In this scenario, I would be upset because I think I should be allowed to stay now and I have a valid adverse possession claim. You would be upset because it was your property at one point, and you want me to leave because you want your property back. And we'd be arguing about the factors, like whether 5 years is enough for the statutory period, whether I've been living there open.
And look, I could tell you're ahead of the game and you got it because you're even now going into the next part. But let me stop you right there. And you did a perfect job. Why are we upset? And you can even take out the law here, but simply put, I'm upset because I, either purchased this house, was gifted this house, but I own this house and I have Safwan staying on it and I want him off. I'm upset because he's in my house. And what do I want? I want him off. Safwan's upset because, hey, I've been here for 5 years and now you're kicking me off. So sometimes even figuring out what the wrong party, the bad faith party is upset about and what they want can be a challenge, but you have to do that in the law. And so that was completely accurate. So then, Saffron, what we then ask ourselves is, once we identify what they're upset about and what they want, you then try to find a matching area of law, which is why, again, you did it so quickly, but obviously with this topic, you're already well connected with what is an area of law that provides a solution here. But if anybody was taking the baby steps to get to that point, you would ask yourself, what area of property law is going to allow somebody like Saffron to claim ownership to land that wasn't originally his? And then that is where you should have learned adverse possession in a way where those two would connect. And so then that's how you go through it. So that's a very simple hypo, right, with a very mini fact pattern. And this question becomes that much more helpful when you can see a big fact pattern with all these multiple reasons why they're upset. And what you do is you make sure you have an area of law that addresses all those points of upset, all those points of what they want. Okay, we'll see this in action here in a second. This next question is another powerful one. What is the fact pattern being oddly specific about? Or what are the elephants in the room? Okay. Kenya, have you ever been in a conversation with somebody and like you were making a joke and the joke just like went over their head? They just did not see the joke at all?
Yes.
Right? It happened to most of us before. What's typically the reason why that's the case? Either the person has like insecurities about something, either they're like thinking too much, they're like in your head, and we'll just leave like the last option. Maybe your joke just wasn't that good, but let's go ahead and say Kenya's jokes are amazing and it was clearly a joke. But a lot of times it could be because somebody is too in their own head and they're missing what you're putting down, right? So this is what happens on the bar exam. You're so caught up in the fact that you're doing a bar essay. You're so caught up in this is a property essay. I got to catch all the issues that you're not picking up what they're putting down. And so if you actually open your eyes and you allow yourself to be guided by the question, everybody, you'll see that the fact patterns are oddly specific about certain things almost every time. What you're looking for is like sentences that are redundant, right? They're using multiple sentences to prove the same point. What you're looking for are very clear adjectives for certain things, right? Of like, he was extremely da 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 da, or right, it was very this, right? So you're looking for these signals of stuff where it's like, oh, that seems to be important, okay? So again, like be present is the reality here so you can be guided by the question. If you're being that person who's receiving that joke and it's going over your head, you're missing what the whole right bar grader, bar question maker is trying to guide you into. And then lastly, in your stop and think phase, you want to ask yourself, have I seen a scenario like this before? And if so, how was it handled? Okay. So again, you only do practice so that it can benefit you later, right? When you have done a certain workout once before, you think about the last time you did it and what improvements to make on it. You don't start from scratch. So when you do a contracts essay that deals with formation, right? Lean on that and that information you learn when you do the next one that's similar. Tracy, question.
Going back to that second point about what the fact pattern is being specific about, one of the things I'm starting to pick up, or I picked up, is that, well, you know how you have those multi-part questions, right? So it'll be like 3 questions. Was a contract formed? And some other questions. That
Yes.
second question will say something like, assuming that a contract was formed. So to me, it kind of gives you a prompt saying, yes, there was a contract. You need to find that it was a contract, because you can't answer the second question without that question.
I would not. They go back and forth on
Sometimes
that,
they
actually,
do that.
Tracy. Yeah, sometimes it actually is likely not a contract. And then just for the sake of being able to add on another question to this scenario, they'll say, assume it was da 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 da. But I feel you. But you don't want to be 100% that when it says assume there was a contract in the second call, that means that you should have concluded in the first one that there was. I would not take that approach. Yeah, great question though. And also too, like I wouldn't look too much into the cause of the question about things they're being oddly specific about, more so what they're saying in the fact pattern. Awesome. Okay, so those are your stop and think questions. All right, so as you see here, Safwan, right? I'm gonna just mention you. Obviously, I'm talking to everybody, but we started with this whole idea of how he was going through essays, and I'm building this new approach to going through, right? So we read the question with a big focus on reading comprehension and understanding the problem and why the parties are upset, the scenario, right? We went into our stop and think to pull out even more based off of our reading comprehension. Well, then now, Safwan, we're entering into, now I'm ready to make a full and final list of what I'm going to discuss. I've read the question, I understand the scenario, I've assessed clearly why the parties are upset. Now let me think through and finalize what I'm going to discuss. All right, so there you go. That's how you start your outline. You take in all the information that you have up until this point, the call of the question, the potential issues that you flagged during your initial read, your reading comp, and your stop and think questions. Within Legally Fit, we have what I call the folder system, which is like various levels of the outline that help condense each subject. Very useful tool to either use if you're in Legally Fit, and if you're in another company that doesn't have these like mini outlines or attack outlines, create checklists for the various subjects. So then that way you can have a little bit of an issue spotting cheat sheet, right? So then you can also use that in this phase to make sure you're talking about all the right things, you can move forward with confidence. So after you finalize your issue spotting, then you organize your outline. Some issues are talked about in a very routine manner, right? Like formation, right? Typically, you're going to do offer first, acceptance, and then consideration. So know the normal approaches for heavily tested topics, but also be prepared to roll with the punches. And if your situation is unique, you have to provide a unique approach to it. So again, there's flexibility in how you approach, but there's also a lot of systems and structure from previous exams that we can learn from. But the next is organize your outline. And then this last one, this is the last step of outlining, is to rank and prioritize your issues. Hanif, I think you know the answer to this one. Let me go off of it just so you can't cheat. What is the importance of, right, you've made it through, you've made your outline, all the issues you're going to discuss, you've organized it. Why are we going to take a moment to like rank and prioritize the issues within that outline?
I think the important part of discernment is the fact that certain issues are going to be weighted more heavily, and this is a timed exam, so you need to know where you want to put your focus.
Exactly. Perfection, right? Whether you're taking the 30-minute exam or the hour exam, the idea is that you're going to want more time to write that out. And all issues cannot be treated equally, right? You could have a contracts essay where formation was a slam dunk analysis that you could have just did in a quick little summary paragraph. And you could have another contracts analysis where you have to break down contract formation into like 5 or 6 different headings and have all the sub rules, et cetera. So all issues aren't treated equally on an exam. You have to figure out for each one, where are the points, and spend your time there accordingly. Okay. So yes, whenever you don't have enough time to do something, prioritization is the key. And that is the case on the bar exam essays. Okay. Oh, this is just a quick summary on what element by element breakdown looks like versus summary style. So when you're breaking down a prioritized issue, you really want that teased out, right? Like, here's my general rule, here's a heading for all the elements, et cetera, versus summary style is more so like, here's the big rule, here's just like a big paragraph real quick, and then here's my conclusion. All right, lastly, this one really more so pertains to the California exam. I think when it comes to the UBE, with it only being 30 minutes, you don't have as much variance in the type of question that you'll be seeing, but taking this information and see how applicable it can be for you. But 100% for those taking any 1 hour exam, understand that there are different types of exams. And I've listed them out for you here, in that there are racehorse exams, in-depth analysis, and organization puzzles. Right. And the reality is that each exam is going to require you to approach it differently in order to be successful. All right. So let's just talk about it first. Safwan, when you have a racehorse, first off, what do you think would describe a racehorse exam?
There's so many issues. There's no way you'll get through all of them in time, so that you'll win if you get the important ones and flesh through those well enough and move on to the next.
Okay, so yeah, I like the description on what it is. There's so many issues, right? Like we're now like in the range of like 8 to 10 issues, right? There's just a lot to talk about, and you can feel that after finishing your outlining phase. When you have a racehorse exam, here are the things you must do. You have to be prepared to move fast. So Saffron, what I realized is that even when I'm like, if I knew it was a racehorse, I was still like finding myself not finishing. I literally started changing my body disposition during a racehorse exam where I'm like leaning into the keyboard just to create a kind of body, reminder of like, hey, I'm moving, I'm going fast, as opposed to kind of like sitting back in my chair and being a little bit more relaxed, right? You want to keep your pre-writing phase a little bit quicker. Typically, a racehorse exam is not as hard to issue, Spot, if you know the law. So you want to feel comfortable going through that pretty fast. You want to be conservative and intentional with counter arguments. You don't have the time to like throw out losing counter arguments that aren't worth any points. You got to move a lot faster. You focus on less depth. For all those that like to really get in and roll up their sleeves and really analyze in detail, you can't do that on a racehorse. You got to hit them with the quick hitters for why this is met or not met and move on. Your whole objective with the racehorse is, can you touch everything? So I want to actually comment on that, Safwan. It's that when you have a racehorse, it's not like which ones are the most important ones and spend your time there. It's more so, can you use your time correctly to talk about all of them? And it'll just be in less detail, right? That's what they're looking for. Did you actually make it through all the triggered issues? Okay, so that's a racehorse. Then you have an in-depth analysis, which is a little bit on the opposite end of the spectrum. There's not as many issues to talk about. And now you're really rolling up your sleeves and teasing out the arguments and being a little bit more wordy, right, about the reasons why this should work or not work, et cetera. You're going to be liberal with counter arguments. You're going to really make sure you're leaning into as many facts as possible. So yeah, like that is the difference. You can maybe come up with 1, 2, 3 reasons why something is meant, as opposed to a racehorse. It's like almost one and done. I got to keep moving. And then lastly, you have organization puzzle. These are the type of essays where the challenge is actually in trying to figure out what's going on. Like they make questions in a way where they give you 5 parties, right? And like 2 different contracts and all these things. And it's just like, that requires you to take more time in your pre-writing phase just to get grounded because there's so much going on. Okay, so look out for that. Spend extra 5 minutes in the pre-writing phase for those and feel comfortable, again, slowing down before you start writing. Okay, just on this last exam, there was a organization puzzle, and so many students I heard were just like, I didn't know what to do, and it was just so difficult. I just started writing and started just throwing spaghetti strings at the wall. That's not what you want to do. Like, understand this is an organization puzzle and spend that extra 5 to 10 minutes getting comfortable. So then that way you can put out the best work product. All right, so that is it on our pre-writing phase. Okay, there's a lot of information in a short time frame. Before we move on to doing some practice with it, do we have any questions? Okay, so before then we get into it, I want to get a little feedback from those I see again with the cameras on, and let me just kind of hear what's going on in your brain. So let me start off with Kenya. Kenya, what is your now initial impression of what we just went through in this entire pre-writing phase?
I think for me, the biggest thing that sticks out is I wish I had this stuff throughout my law school experience. It would have made essay writing a lot more, I don't want to say tangible, or, I mean, I would have had a strategy, so, and my grade would have been a lot higher. I
would have been a
definitely
lot more
see how
structured.
yeah, basically.
And you can say you see how what?
How you were the top of your class with this strategy.
There we go. Awesome. Okay, so good. So the initial impression is like, look, this is good. I'm ready to go with this. I wish I had this before, but guess what, Kenya? We're happy that we're here now, getting it now for the biggest test of your life. So we'll be able to practice it and improve it. Awesome. Yeah, you're welcome. Okay, and then so Saffron, right? What's your initial impression so far of this? Are we vibing with it? Are we ready to adopt it? Are we a little hesitant? Talk to me.
Yes, I would echo much of what Kenya said. I had a light bulb moment while you were explaining the 2 different ways to address issues, the quick summary one and the longer one that separates everything out. That's something I've always been confused by when I look at sample essays from the California bar, like previous bar exams. There's some that cover formation in, 4 or 5 sentences that are very brief. And I've always been confused by that. But the way you explained it just now, I think that makes a lot more sense.
Awesome, man. Good. There we go. And then I see we got a question from Elizabeth in the chat. How can you keep from racehorsing everything? All right. So yes, the nature of it is that like everything has a bit of a racehorse feel to it, Elizabeth, when it comes to the bar exam, because honestly, the time conditions are just so strict and so tight that like it's going to always feel like you wish you had more time. But I think the way that you figure out if you're actually dealing with the racehorse is the number of issues being tested. So Elizabeth, are you taking the California exam or are you taking the UBE?
The UBE.
Okay, so you're taking the UBE. So with the UBE exam, I don't have the exact numbers and as much familiarity with it. We've helped students with the UBE, but our big focus is on the California exam. So what I can tell you that'll help you figure that out is like, start looking at exams and start getting a feel for what that range is on the number of issues that you have to actually talk about and discuss. And so maybe for the UBE, for that 30-minute essay, the average is typically like 4 issues, maybe. Well, then if you get that essay that tests like 8 issues, 7 issues, then all right, I have more issues than normal. This is a racehorse. So yes, every exam is going to feel that time pressure, but a true racehorse is one in which it's above average the number of issues you have to discuss. For at least the California bar, one of the most typical subjects that like to use a racehorse type of exam is evidence, right? We love to see like 5, 6, 7 pieces of evidence. Like, all right, I got to fly through this. It's also for the classes that do have issues that are a little bit more matter of fact, that are less like debatable, right? So evidence is very like, it either is or it isn't. Contracts, it either is or it isn't. There's not typically a lot of back and forth, so that way they can put in more issues. Compared to a class like con law, right? Con law is very debatable. The rules are very gray and you can really get into like, well, they're going to argue this and they're going to do this. So you also see trends, as I'm mentioning, within each subject. Tracy, you have your hand up for a question?
Yeah, so you were talking, I know you said that this is focused on the California bar, but that 30 minutes on the UBE flies, like it flies.
Yes.
And having taken it twice, it flies. Like you look up, you got like 10 minutes left. And so you were talking about the pre-writing and the outlining, and I'm scared to give up 15 minutes to 15 minutes of that 30 minutes, right? Like 5 minutes, 7, 10 tops. But, and I keep hearing that you need to outline for 15 minutes and you need to write for 15 minutes. And I'm like, I just can't get my mind around that, right? Because it goes by so fast. That 30 minutes goes by so fast. And like you said, you look up and you're 10 minutes over, now you're freaking out. And the essay section has been my downfall, right? The MCQs, the first time I took the PTs, I had like 40 minutes left. And when I saw the guy that was sitting next to me at lunchtime, he was like, I thought you just quit. And I was like, no. And I scored something like 15 out of 20 on both of them. So it was no problem. Like I have no problem. It's the essays that are killing me.
So here's what I got for you. So you just mentioned that you're hearing that the rule of thumb for these 30-minute essays is still to spend 15 minutes preparing and 15 minutes writing. Now, with that, I don't think you can reduce that by too much, because I have looked at UBE essays and sometimes those fact patterns are just as long as California. So you need time just to read and understand what's going on. So you can't shrink that by too much, and you still have to do all the other steps. So here's what my recommendation is, and here's my analogy for how, and again, the challenge is really in your preparation. So I know we don't like to cook, but I know we can still appreciate this example that I'll give, right? And so let's say I want to make macaroni and cheese, right? And let's say I'm going on a cooking show, and we've seen all the cooking shows and the pressure is on. Everybody make your best mac and cheese in 30 minutes. And it's like, well, damn, like on Thanksgiving, I need way more than 30 minutes to make that mac and cheese, all these things. So how does one get to the point of making that perfect mac and cheese in 30 minutes on that game show? It comes down to your preparation. It comes down to like you having certain things, such an autopilot that you're able to do it in those strict time constraints on the day of performance. So what I want you to think about is that the real hack and the real way to actually save and make up time is that you're doing so much practice in the right way that on the day of the exam, you're improving your time because you're just recalling from what you've seen in practice to do that faster. That's how you do it. But I don't think it's in cutting that first 15 minutes to prepare. Maybe you can get that down to 10 minutes. But like you said, cutting it down to 5 or 7, you're going to set yourself up for failure in that way because that's just not enough time to process and prepare for what you're going to write. So keep that around 10 to 15 minutes and do more and more practice, right? So I'm going to give you a quick example of this, right? In Legally Fit, one of the essays that we teach, I can't remember the year that it is, but the scenario was Tracy runs a business in her garage, and it's a computer sales business. And Safwan is aware that Tracy is going to be out of town this weekend. Sorry, Safwan, you're just the criminal of today's session. So here we are. So Safwan's aware of this. Safwan goes into Tracy's garage at night and goes in to steal the computers. This garage is attached to the home by a door. Tracy hears him in the garage, comes down, tries to stop him. He pushes her, gets away, etc. So, Tracy, one of the big issues on here was whether Safwan committed a burglary. One of the key elements of a burglary is whether or not it was a dwelling. And there's a older rule and a more modern rule for what a dwelling is. Right? Before it had to be a place normally used for sleeping purposes, but modernly it's expanded. But the question is, under that older rule, is this garage going to be considered a dwelling? Well, nobody sleeps in there, but it is attached to the house by a garage door, right? And she was able to hear what was happening in the garage from her bedroom. So that kind of makes it more like it's part of the house. There was all these arguments that flushed out whether this garage is part of the dwelling. Now, fast forward 10 years later, and we're at the bar exam. I believe it was the July 23 exam. And now Safwan is homeless. He's out in the cold and he sees Tracy's garage and he peeks inside, doesn't see anything or anybody in there, but sees some wood and sees the opportunity to make a fire to make himself warm. So he breaks into your garage to then keep himself warm. Okay. And then ended up being like he started a fire. The fire actually burned down the house and killed somebody inside, all this extra stuff. But we had to analyze burglary, right? On a scale of 1 to 10, how similar do you think this burglary discussion is to the first one with the computer sales business?
On a scale of 1 to 10?
Yeah. How similar do you think the arguments are and the analysis is to the computer sales business?
I mean, it's fairly similar because the question is about, the dwelling.
Yeah.
Right. But
and don't give me the detail. Just give me the number. What number would you give it out of a scale of 1 to 10?
4 or 5, about a 5.
I'm gonna give this more of a 7 or an 8, right? 8 or a 9 on the similarity here, because it's the same thing. And this is how you have to look at the bar, everybody. There are patterns, right? That you then add the frosting and the vanilla cream on the top just to kind of disguise it into something different, but it's the same pattern. It's the same foundation. So if you were to generalize this, in the first scenario, you had a culprit, a criminal, entering into somebody's garage that was attached to the home. In this case, you had a criminal entering in a garage that was attached to somebody's home. We just changed the circumstances and what they were going in for, but that's not going to significantly change anything in the outcome. So all that to say, Tracy, is that I expected my students, right? And a lot of them did this, right? Where it's like, soon as they see that and they're connecting it to that previous hypo that they've done, they're going through that so fast because they're seeing the similarity and just recycling the arguments that we've seen. Was this attached by a door, right? Oh, could they hear this from da-da-da-da, right? Like, oh, nobody slept in the garage, so it's not a dwelling. You're just recycling those arguments. So I'll leave that with there, but that's a big way on how you improve that time, not by cutting your pre-writing phase, but by doing enough practice that you really have this arsenal of organization, this arsenal of arguments, right, et cetera. Okay, so great stuff. We'll take more questions again at the end if there's any more. And then, yeah, let's go ahead and now jump into some actual practice. So let's just take 2 minutes, right? A lot of information. If anybody needs to take a quick little stretch, quick little bathroom break, and then we're going to come back and we're going to go through a contracts essay. All right, come back at 12:32 Pacific Standard Time. All right. Time flies when you're in bar prep. That was a quick 2 minutes. Let's go ahead and get those cameras on. Cameras on. All right. Contracts essay time. So let me do a screen share of the iPad now. Okay, so what we're about to do is a California exam, but the length of it is, I would say, very appropriate for the UBE. And this is just going to show all the steps in action. I'm going to kind of demonstrate a lot. I'll call on you guys for a little bit, but mostly I'm going to be demonstrating how you do this with the actual fact pattern. Okay, so take a look. This is the contracts essay from the California Bar Exam, July 2012. This is one on the shorter side. So again, very much so similar to a UBE exam in the length. And yeah, so you'll be surprised as for the California exam, how many things there are to discuss here. And just, you know, for the sake of us all understanding how this is different, one of the key differences between the UBE and the California is that UBE will say, like, at the end here, very specific calls all the time, right? like 1, 2, 3. Here's what I want you to discuss, this, this, and this. So it actually kind of makes issue spotting a little bit easier versus California. What they're known for is, what rights does Peter have? What remedies might he obtain? So there's very open-ended kind of like, what all could be discussed under these circumstances, which lends to much longer answers, right? An additional 30 minutes of writing. All right, so let's go ahead and jump into it. But just to see if we're practicing some good recall, Safwan, why don't you remind us, man, what is our side? What are our 4 steps of the pre-writing phase?
The first one is to read. I don't remember like the caveats to it.
Read the question with intention. Mm-hmm.
Yes. Stop and think.
Good.
Something with an O, I don't remember. Sorry. Yeah.
Oh, you got to remember the O. It's important. You got to do before you start writing. Something that you did
Outline.
for every. There you go. Outline.
Is the last one a D, like as in dog?
Yeah. Determine your strategy and then figure out what type of essay it is. So first time, so I expect that recall to be a little shaky, but we want to get that down, right? So every time you start an essay, everybody, you're like, all right, cool, our side, let's go. And remember, everybody, our initial read, primary focus is reading comprehension. Secondary focus is spotting issues. The issue spotting will come. All right. So let's jump into it. I'll start with reading the call of the question just to get a feel for what essay this was, because on the day of the exam, you don't know what it'll be. Obviously, we know this is contracts, I told you, but it's still good to just build good habits. So again, what rights does Peter have? Rights does Peter have, and what remedies might he obtain as to employment and the parcel of land? Already some critical information there that like we're kind of seeing what he's likely going to be upset regarding in this. There's employment and then there's parcel of land. Okay, got it. I'm also starting to see the beginning of what the possible lawsuit is. What rights does Peter have? So I'm going to go ahead and write Peter versus blank. I don't know who yet, but it's Peter versus somebody. All right. Then I'm jumping into the beginning of the fact pattern. So it says here, Peter responded to an advertisement placed by Della, a dentist seeking a dental hygienist. All right. So first sentence, I'm automatically pausing and I'm just like making sure I have all of that down. So I'm going to diagram. I'm a big fan of diagramming as I read. So I'm going to go ahead and write Della. Let me get out of highlighter mode. I'm going to write Della is a dentist. She puts out an ad, and then that ad brings in Peter, who she's seeking to hire as a dental hygienist. Perfect. Just something simple for me to conceptualize that. Also, I know this is contract law. Let's see if some of us are learning some of this. So Hanif, from a quick issue spotting perspective, is anything popping into your head immediately as an area of law or topic within contract law that I'm going to trigger immediately here?
Yes, the word advertisement
Exactly.
is an offer.
So advertisement, we learned that in the world of whether ads are offers or not. What are we not going to do, Hanif? We're not going to analyze this right now as whether or not this is going to be sufficient to be an offer. I'm simply seeing it and putting it down. So right here on my right-hand side, I'm putting it out of my brain onto the paper and moving on to see other things. It says after an interview. Oh, but also too, it's good to understand the law and kind of do some soft, just like, you know what's going on. So what's our general rule of thumb? Ads are offers or ads are not offers?
Ads are not offers.
Yeah. So it's just kind of like, all right, probably not an offer, but cool. I'll see about that later. After an interview, Della offered Peter the job and said that she would either pay him $50,000 per year or pay him $40,000 per year and agree to convey him a parcel of land worth about $50,000 if he would agree to work for 3 consecutive years. Again, a lot of information. Take a second and process all that. So what we have here is we want to get situated with who's offering who. So it was an offer from Della to Peter. Okay, the dentist to the dental hygienist. Fair enough. And then basically it was an offer where there was two options that Peter could choose from for compensation. Either it was $50K or it was $40K a year, $40K a year plus land, but there was also a 3-year commitment. Okay. And there we go, right? Like after that, nothing is too complicated. You visually see it. There's a simple one of $50K per year, or there's another one that includes land. It's a smaller yearly salary. And there's a commitment that Peter will be agreeing to of at least 3 years. Awesome. That's reading comprehension. Taking a second, making sure you get it before you continue reading on. Peter accepted the offer. Boom, accepted the offer. That's a word within contract law, acceptance. I'd like to go with the second option, but I would like a commitment for an additional 3 years after the first 3. Della said, good, I'd like for you to start next week. Okay, so again, I'm just processing this. So Peter said he wanted to do this, but he basically is changing the terms. I'm generalizing this. He's changing the terms by adding in an additional commitment of 3 years. And then she said, good. So this is where, as Saffron was saying earlier, we're looking for the traps. Saffron, can you explain what the trap is here? Are you seeing it?
Yeah, it says he accepted the offer, but he didn't because he adds another term that he wants. He says, I'd like to go with the second option, but I would like a commitment for an additional 3 years. So
yes,
that's not an acceptance, that's a counteroffer.
All right. So look, if anybody was falling for the bait here and just like taking that for face value, that it says Peter accepted, right? Then you were going to be falling for the trap here. Here, Peter attempted to accept, but what Peter actually did was created a counter offer. So I'm just going to keep writing this list down here. So then you had acceptance by Peter, and then I'm going to put quotes because it wasn't really one. And then you have counter offer by Peter. All right. So then once a counter offer is made, we should know enough contract law to know that then that person becomes the offeror and the other person has to accept. Then Della said, good, I'd like you to start next week. All right. Again, if you're knowing the foundation of contract law, what are the two ways to accept a bilateral contract? Tracy, what are the two ways to accept a bilateral contract? Oh, you're muted.
Muted.
There we go. Now we can hear you.
I'm sorry, I was in the next paragraph.
Look,
what was the
going
question
and
again?
moving too fast.
I know. Yeah, it was a counter offer, and you said what?
My question to you, what are the two ways to accept a bilateral contract? Okay, so we need to get that rule down. Any phone a friend there? Anybody know the answer to that? What are the two ways to accept a bilateral offer? Excuse me, not bilateral contract. What are the two ways to accept a bilateral offer?
Can I try?
Yeah.
Is that promise for promise and promise for performance?
Promise for promise or promise for performance. That's the difference between bilateral and unilateral. That's not how you accept a bilateral. So quick refresher, the two ways to accept, and how do you pronounce your name?
Rihanna.
Rihanna. So Rihanna, the two ways to accept a bilateral is a return promise or the start of performance. Those are the two ways to accept. And so here, Della said, good, I'd like you to start next week. Again, we don't want to do any in-depth analysis, but you can quickly interpret this as, okay, that was more or less a return promise of like a counter offer of, I want an additional 3 years. Good, I'd like you to start next week. That we can deem as a return promise. So then we have an acceptance that we're going to analyze by Della. And even if you couldn't analyze that immediately, still need to be able to interpret that as an attempted acceptance that you will later determine once you get into the thick of your discussion. All right. So, Rihanna, what we said we wanted to do after each paragraph is 1 to 2 word summaries on the left-hand side of what that paragraph was about for the purpose of being able to come back to this later and make sure we know what's going on. But you're going to want to use verbatim facts. And if you have an annotated fact pattern, it makes it easier. So how would you summarize this paragraph in 1 to 2 words, right? Of just what, this is about.
Sorry, I just got online. Can you tell me which paragraph?
The first one. Yeah. And so go ahead and get familiar with it too, then. I'll come back to you for the next one. So Hanif, what would you summarize that paragraph?
I'm trying to do it without thinking about the law, but in my first 2 words is contract formation.
Yeah, so I'm just gonna say, like, this is like, it's hard to avoid the law here on this one. So this is them, like, I would call this like negotiations. Like, that's the summary, right? So P and D negotiate and form contract. That's a summary. So it's just like, this is now when I want to go back to that part of the story, I know where to go. Okay, let's go to the next paragraph. Then it says, after Peter started work, Della handed him a letter she had signed, which stated only that he had agreed to work as a dental hygienist at a salary of $40,000 per year. All right. So again, somebody's coming into your office, Safwan. You got to be able to see where the issue's at as they're developing. And so one right now is exposing itself to us. What's the issue here?
Parole evidence rule.
And not necessarily the issue as far as an area of law, but what is the issue as far as like from a human perspective? What's the issue with what you were just told?
The fact that they have a signed letter that says one thing, but an oral agreement, if it was an agreement, but an oral thing that says a different thing.
Yes. And then let's be specific. What is it missing?
How long it's supposed to be for.
Okay. So it's missing the 6 years. And what else is it missing?
The land.
Exactly, right? And so look, this is
Missing
why
the
step 1, 2, I want you to be specific, both in how you're talking to me and on the exam, because it's that specificity that they're looking for. So you're completely accurate. Oh yeah, there's a difference, but let's go ahead and just lay that out now. And yes, it's missing the 6-year commitment and it's missing the land. If we look over here, it only had the 40K, but it missed the land and it missed the 3 years plus the additional 3, right? So the total of 6. Okay, let's also look at, as even we're going through this, some of the things they're being oddly specific about. Again, they already were kind of hinting at the fact that this was missing something when they said stated only, right? So to try to bring your attention to the fact that this did not have everything. Also, it was very clear and specific about the fact that it was a letter that she had signed, right? And there's no facts or mention of anybody else signing it. So it was only signed by Della, right? So we could just do a little piece of paper here and then put a D for Della. She's the one that signed it, but all it had was the 40K. All right, so what are some potential law issues? And let's not get into the depth of it right now, but what are some potential law issues, law topics that can help in this scenario? So Safwan already mentioned that he's triggering the parole evidence rule. Anybody else see a potential issue here?
Breach of
Area of
contract?
discussion? Huh?
Breach of contract?
So we don't have breach just yet, right? Because we're waiting that. So that's kind of like the writing on the wall that we're going to get to that point. Hanif, what about you?
I was thinking modification.
Say it again.
I was thinking modification.
Modification of the contract. Okay, that's something. That's a possibility. There's another big one, though, that is a main issue that comes from these facts. Give one last shot at somebody being able to spot it.
Formation.
Not formation. Formation is going to be all the stuff above hand. It's going to be.
I said reformation.
Oh,
like
reformation.
The reform
no,
the contract.
got you. Nope, it's not going to be reformation. It's going to be statute of frauds. Okay, statute of frauds. And I'm going to show you how I can see some confused faces as to how or why. But basically the question is this a sufficient writing? Right? There's two different approaches at going about this. A lot of students think that this is a parole evidence question, and there's good reason why you may think so, but it in fact is not. But I'm going to talk about that here at the end. Okay. After Peter had worked for 2 years and 9 months, Della decided that she would sell the parcel of land and not convey it to him. Oddly specific about the amount of time that he worked. 2 years and 9 months, very detailed there. So Peter had worked for 2 years and 9 months. So he didn't even make it to the 3-year mark. And Della decided that she would sell the parcel of land and not convey it to him. So we're getting the impression there, the way I'm interpreting that is like, damn, Della, is backing out on this deal. That's where now I'm starting to feel some breach, right? Let me go back to the marker. Now I'm starting to feel some breach. And then the next sentence said, Safwan, even though she had always been satisfied with his work, she fired him. Again, pick up what they're putting down. What are they, we read in between the lines, what are they communicating there?
At will employment?
Not that this is at will employment, because that would be just on, like the grounds of what the contract was. So try again, like in between the lines, even though she had always been satisfied with his work, she fired him. What are they trying to?
Maybe bad faith?
Exactly. There we go. Bad faith. Right? Where it's like, and I put without cause. So really, again, this is such a good explanation or example of what I was telling you all in the beginning of like, you have to be present with the question to see where they're guiding you. And this whole paragraph is just really setting up, again, Della, before the 3 years even hit, definitely before the 6 years hit, fires him, doesn't want to give him the land. And then the last part is that, like, even though she had always been satisfied with his work, decided to fire him. So it's almost as if like, like she doesn't have a legal way to get out of this situation other than the fact that maybe there wasn't a contract to begin with because of some various issues. So back to then the call of the question, what rights does Peter have? Now we know we can replace this question mark right here with Peter versus Della. Okay. And then now we are finished with reading the question. So again, look how I spotted certain issues, put them down. I'm still left like, what do I do next, right? I'm not ready to write at all, but understand this is the proper first step. So then you go into your stop and think questions and you ask yourself, why are the parties upset and what do they want? Who wants to give it their first attempt at articulating that on behalf of Peter? It's very clean and easy, and the call of the question helps you. Why is Peter upset and what does he want?
He's mad that he got fired and he wants to either be paid for money he missed out on, or he wants the job back and the land.
Perfect. Okay, so he might want his job back. He might want, as you said, money damages for the time. And again, Safwan, be specific. So what would be that time frame?
2 years and 3 months.
How long?
3 years. 3 years.
3 years and 3 months, because he got fired 2 years and 9 months. So 3 years and 3 months to take him to the full 6 years. So he wants money for that. Okay, he wants the job back. And again, you're missing one big thing. Tracy?
The land?
Yeah, there you go.
He wants the land.
Exactly. Let's not forget about the land. Okay. So those were things he's upset about. You have to figure out what is your route to get that. And we're going to talk about that next. But then let's talk about Della. What does Della want? At this point, Della doesn't really have much to be upset about, but everybody always has a want. Della's want is to avoid any problems, right? She wants to be able to walk away from the situation without having to pay anything or provide any damages, etc. So she wants to just basically avoid any obligations. All right, now I'm going to show you how you take that and turn it into a beginning stage of like how you're going to get to this path. So in order for Peter to get what he wants, what is Peter going to have to prove? Peter's going to have to prove, one, that a contract was formed, right? that included the terms that he wanted, which was 40K land and 6 years. Okay. And then he's going to also have to make sure that that contract is enforceable. Della is going to want the opposite. Della's going to want no contract formation. And then what you have to look to is like, what are some of the main arguments that Della's going to be able to use? So maybe she's going to argue maybe nothing was formed in the back and forth. So we know we're going to have to like tease that out of all that negotiation and what actually was the contract, et cetera. So the back and forth, maybe that led to no formation. And then how about the fact that like, she's going to say, you know what? We had a contract and all that contract said was 40K a year. So, right, then there's no breach. So the way that this question wanted you to go through this though, was more so by Della raising the statute of frauds to find that this contract was not enforceable. Okay, so I'm going to attempt, right? This might be something worth more of a deeper lesson on parole evidence, et cetera. But I'm going to attempt, Safwan, to show you guys in 5 minutes as to why parole evidence is a good discussion, but how they went essentially a different route here. Okay, so let me get a blank piece of paper. So the concept of parole evidence, everybody, is saying that you have a contract and it only has something in it, but there was something that was said in pre-contract negotiations that you want to bring into it, right? And in theory, Safwan, that is 100% logical here, right? Where the contract itself only says 40K and you're trying to bring over the land and the 6-year commitment, right? What I want to just tell you though, as logical as this is not the typical way, and you'll see by doing other essays, the way that they trigger parole evidence, right? Typically, parole evidence has very minimal facts on the whole pre-contract negotiations. They kind of just mention something that was said, right? And then they have a lot of detail on the actual writing. There's more there. Oh, paragraph 15B said this, and maybe there was a merger clause in that, right? In this fact pattern, if we go back, it's the opposite. This has more of the feeling that there was a lot of detail given on this pre-contract negotiation to the point where there was this like formal back and forth and an agreement was actually formed, right? And so then you had minimal facts on the writing, which is right here. This was just the writing, right? So I'm going to show you now what you take away from this is that there's 2 ways to go about it. This parole evidence route, which was not the main route. The other route of going through this on behalf of Peter is that there was an oral agreement. This oral agreement included the land, the 6-year, and the 40K. Now, what's the issue for Peter with this oral agreement is that for multiple reasons, this would trigger the statute of frauds that would require this to be in writing, right? Well, there are exceptions that are applicable here that will get rid of the statute of frauds requirement. So Peter is actually going to be able to enforce this as an oral agreement instead of having to show that, oh, through parole evidence, we're going to include this in the writing. All right. So that's the quick 5-minute explanation. Safwan, did that all click? Did that make sense?
Yes, it did. So would you still talk about parole evidence and say how it's not an issue here? Or
not necessarily. Depends on this, like how I'm doing with timing, but yeah, not necessarily. Yep. And so everybody, I want to make it clear, this is why you have to do practice, right? Because you have to do and see what are the typical trends and triggers for certain topics. Because Safwan is, again, very, very logical and smart to think parole evidence here, but it's more, this is what I said about learning the exam and how they typically like to trigger things and just accepting, right? Bar prep is a lot about acceptance and not fighting. Why do they do that? Like, I don't like that. No, it's about like, I don't like they did that, but why? Let me just figure it out so I can give it back to you. And let me see the difference of when this is more so a parole evidence issue. Okay. So for time purposes, let's go ahead and call this here. So we were able to go through the read with intention and see how that goes. And then we were able to go through the stop and think questions of why they're upset and what do they want. And you see how that started to like build our outline. The next step of what we would do is actually taking some individual thought to see, all right, what are all the things I'm going to discuss? So take a look now at our issue checklist. And notice how everything is connected to what we've already thought about and determined. And again, this is a longer issue checklist and a longer discussion based on the California essay. If this was UBE, again, you'd have more specific questions that took you to certain parts of this, right? But let's just take a look. Applicable law. You always have to talk about applicable law on a contracts essay. Did DNP form a valid enforceable contract? So you go through that. Then you go through formation. Mutual assent. These are all just like setup headings, right? Because for California, you got to do the dance and the setup. Now, look how we decided to organize this. Because mutual assent was a main issue here, I actually decided to break this down by event. So that way it was a little bit more logical and easier to tackle instead of just having a big offer question. And then within that offer paragraph, talking about the ad, talking about the post-interview thing, right, et cetera. So what we see here is just chronological order from our timeline. We go into whether the ad was an offer, then whether the post-interview offer was an offer, then whether Peter's response to Della was an acceptance, whether Peter's response was a counter offer, which it was, and then whether the counter offer was accepted. Then that leads us to a conclusion. And I can just tell you the conclusion here should be that there was a contract, there was mutual assent, and the terms were the 6 years, the land, and the 40K. And it's all because this was in fact a counter offer that was then accepted. Consideration is a slam dunk here, absolutely. Then you get to defenses to formation. Again, you're going to raise the statute of frauds. This contract does need to be in writing. It is triggered by the statute of frauds. You would definitely argue that there is no sufficient writing here, right? Like number one thing for a land sale contract is you have to have a description of the land, of the property. There was no such thing in this writing. So yeah, this is not a sufficient writing. However, even if there's no sufficient writing, you can still get around the statute of frauds with exceptions. So guess what's going to come back into play here? All that bad faith by Della, right? The fact that she fired without cause and she seemingly is just trying to avoid her obligations. You're going to talk about promissory estoppel and equitable estoppel. Part performance is like a throw-in topic just because it's land involved. But yeah, it's those estoppel doctrines that we learn as exceptions that are at play here. Okay. And then lastly, you just talk about breach, right? Assuming there was a contract and these are the terms, Della breached by firing him 2 years and 9 months into this 6-year commitment and not giving him the land. Let's pause on remedies for now, because that is like a separate discussion of going through that formula and doing all that. But that shows you, again, look how everything that we discussed, statute of frauds, all this mutual assent, all that's connected to what we did in our preparation phase. Okay, so let me go ahead and stop sharing here. And let's start off with Safwan. Safwan, how do we feel about going through that essay and putting it into practice? Do we have any follow-up questions or thoughts? Give me some feedback.
I definitely need more practice. I don't have any particular follow-up questions at this point. Yeah, especially when I see those sample essays from the Calbar releases, there are different ways to do headings. I still need to experiment with that and see what fits. But yeah, so far I feel like I need more practice. That's for sure.
Good, man. I'm happy we get that awareness. And chances are we should all be feeling that way, because that is the key to passing this exam. I get people who I'll see in middle of bar prep, Safwan, they're like, yeah, I've only written out like 2 essays. And I'm like, only written out 2 essays? I'm having my students write out at least 2 essays, right, on every essay day a week, and we have at least 2 of those. So my students are writing out at least 4 essays a week, let alone all the other essays that they're seeing. So much of your practice has to be, everybody, whether it's California UBE, getting into these questions. Don't be afraid of them. Don't avoid them. These are the best resources to learn from. Okay. All right. So before we transition into the end, and like I said, we're going to do a little quiz and raffle or quiz and announce a winner for a free tutoring session. Any questions on this contracts essay we did? Any questions on what we've learned today substantively at all? No, awesome. All right. So then before we officially end, I'm just going to call on a few other students who we didn't hear from the first time on this matter. And so, yeah, Hanif, let's go with you, man. So all of what we learned today, both within contract specifically, but also this pre-writing phase, now that you're in the middle of bar prep, because I know you're a little bit familiar with Legally Fit, I want to hear from you of what's your main takeaway from today's session.
I guess my main takeaway, I was thinking about it as in ways of like improvement. I with contract essays specifically, I almost see them as like a logic puzzle, even when they're not, just because of like I was thrown off by like the how to chronologically talk about each event, and then I see how you did it, and I was like, oh, that makes sense. Let's talk about each event. I was just trying to fit them all into like offer, acceptance, consideration, and like how do I fit them in? That didn't make any sense. So, so I guess my takeaway is more strategical.
Yeah. So let's talk about that really quickly. That's a great takeaway, right, for you? Because again, I know you've gotten a lot of these lessons. Hanif has been fortunate to be in Legally Fit's early bar prep course. So a lot of these lessons you've picked up on. So now you're getting deep into even just this particular essay and contracts, which you can do. And what I want to say to that is, Hanif, that is the determining your strategy approach, right? So we said there's racehorse, in-depth analysis, and determine your strategy, organization puzzle. Which of the three would this essay be?
To me, it was an organizational puzzle.
Absolutely. And that was a challenge, right? And so everybody, right? Like that's the thing of like that mutual assent back and forth. It was like, how was I going to do that? Was I going to organize it by my typical headings of offer, acceptance, and consideration, and then try to squeeze all of these things in there? Or am I going to do this a different way? And so Hanif just mentioned like, oh, okay, so I see how you did it. And that makes a lot more sense. So that's what you do in practice, Hanif. And again, like, just to be clear, make sure you don't put too much pressure on yourself to, know all of this before getting into practice. You just do the practice and absorb it. So what everybody's takeaway from this should be is that, hey, when I'm doing a contracts essay, an alternative to organizing by my traditional headings is that I can organize in the order of facts, right? Like a sequential order of the facts and use the facts as headings, which is what we did. Was the advertisement an offer? Was the post-interview offer an offer? Was this an acceptance, et cetera? So you can go just like in this, right, consequential order to use those as headings. That would be your takeaway. So if you do another contracts essay, you have that now in your arsenal. Awesome. All right. And then let's do one more. And let's go to Tracy. Tracy, what was your main takeaway from today? Whether it was the formula you learned or the pre-writing phase, whether it was something in the very beginning on just like how to adjust to bar prep, could be anything. But yeah, what was your main takeaway?
Yeah, my main takeaway, like I said, the pre-writing and the outlining, I mean, it was helpful. It definitely was helpful. And the writing on the margins, the diagramming, was helpful. I know we didn't get all the way through to perform to his remedies, but I was over here, definitely taking the
Going
time
ahead
to outline
and look, I see
to outline and stuff. And you see, I have a study buddy who is not helpful at all. So yes,
we're gonna have to
it was
ask
definitely helpful.
Rocco, what's his name?
Her name is
Her name?
Sage. She's a
Her name.
green-eyed. She has green eyes. She's a green-eyed pit bull.
Okay.
Red-nosed pit bull. So
I think Sage's takeaway from today was every time we talked about food, he said, "Oh, we making macaroni and cheese."
Yes. My other takeaway is that I continue to struggle on contracts, which is my worst subject. So
okay, so that just means we got to put it into
just
practice.
really figuring out contract. in my head. So
all right. Okay, good. Awesome, everybody. Well, yeah, this was awesome. Really appreciate. We'll give you guys some more information on what is going to come up next and more opportunities to continue to get resources throughout the summer. But before we leave, let's go ahead and find a winner for a free hour of one-on-one coaching. Super excited to give this away. So let me get this quiz ready for you all. It should take no longer than 5 minutes. We're going to do it live right now in the session. So let me get this started. And this is an overview of contract law. Okay. So back to Zoom, share screen. All right. So everybody, and this is what I was saying too, anybody in here who is sitting in, who is a practicing attorney, just here for support and here to be part of the event, feel free to also take the quiz if you want to see how much you still got. Okay, but obviously the coaching will not go to you, but rather a student in need. So joinmyquiz.com, okay, and then type in that code and then fill out your name, okay? And then don't fill out your name if you are an attorney doing this, just type attorney, right? So that way we only have the names of people who are students. Okay, so I'll give a few moments for that. And then let me copy this. I'm also going to put it in the chat if anybody's having any difficulty. Oh, that was just the code. Copy link. All right, we'll just give it one more minute. I know some of us are driving and listening in as we're doing things. So yes, do not do this quiz while driving, not recommended. Okay, so we got another one in there. Here we go. Hassan just got in. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and, okay, so we got Kenya. We'll give you guys just 2 more seconds, last ones to get their names in, get ready for this quiz. What are we shooting for here, Safwan, percentage-wise? What you shooting for?
The goal is always 100.
There we go. Okay, so the goal is 100, and then what's the expectation? I'm gonna at least get what percentage?
Are these like bar questions, or are they like, do you
So
understand the concept?
this is gonna be. It's not gonna be hypos. These are gonna be like, do you understand the basics of contract law, right? So like the basics of formation, the basics of applicable law, things like that.
Maybe like 3 out of 4 questions.
Okay, so what's that? 75%. Okay. All right. So let's see what we do as a class and individually. I'm gonna go ahead and start it. I see we got about 10 people or so, 8 in the quiz. Anybody else still signing in before I hit start? Because once I hit start, you can no longer join. Okay, let's go ahead and get started. So you'll all be prompted to do the quiz on your device. Just go ahead and do it as quickly and accurately as you can. All right, we're gonna go for 2 more minutes. So get through as many of the questions as you can in 2 more minutes. All right, so we're gonna go ahead and end it here. And there we go. We got first place, Hanif. Congratulations on winning a free hour of private coaching. And Safwan, you're right there, man, came in second, and Tracy with third. So thanks everybody for playing. Hopefully you had a little fun with that. And also what I want to give some recognition to, right? It looks like we all can improve though in contracts. This is something where I would want for us to definitely be ideally in the 90% and above if we're taking the upcoming July exam, especially if we have covered contracts already. As you saw, that these weren't even questions in hypothetical format or in practice. These are foundational questions. So let's take a look at just a few of these to see which ones were tripping us up a lot. So we see question 5, question 10, got a lot of us, right? Okay, so let's look at question 5 and 10. And then even 1, 2, and 3 was getting us. So let's just do a quick few of these. So which of the following is a theory of recovery under contract law? All of the above. So restitution is a theory of recovery. Restitution is based off of the concept that maybe there's not a traditional contract, but one party has conferred a benefit to the other, and it would be unjust for there to be no remedy for the other side. So this is a fairness remedy. Both reliance and restitution are these fairness theories of recovery, where the legal recovery is a breach of traditional contract. But again, sometimes there is no contract. Next, contract is governed by rules from common law, modern law, and then the UCC, and then the restatement. So on the bar exam, everybody, you're just dealing with the common law and the UCC. We learned something about the restatements, right, in law school, but you don't have to worry about that on the bar exam. And then also we don't have, compared to some of the other ones like crim law, the modern law. So for the contracts, you just need to know common law and then the UCC. All right. A valid offer must be blank. Okay. So I see at least one of us, Hassan, he had the right concept, but in the format that it was asking, there's the wrong context and the phrasing of the word. So a valid offer must be accepted in order to create the contract. But we'll give you a moral point there for sure. And then let's go to number 5 and see which one that was. I got everybody. An offer can no longer be accepted if it has already been terminated. So a lot of us said revoked, which is accurate, but it's not completely accurate. Revocation is just one type of termination. So an offer can no longer be accepted if it has been rejected, if it has been revoked, if time has lapsed, or if by some operation of law, it has been otherwise terminated. So terminated is the correct answer there. Okay. Also, too, shout out to whoever 208391 is. I saw that outside of timing, we were doing really good with getting the questions right, but we do want to get that speed up. Okay, so that'll end that. While we're here on the computer too, let me just talk about this specifically with seeing, where we were all at with contracts. So this is the Legally Fit website. Okay, so we're in the middle of our 10-week course. Some of you guys may be interested in joining a program if you haven't already. We've also had students who have switched over into our bar prep in the middle of bar prep because they find value in doing so. So I'll leave that to something you can, again, go to the website and follow the steps, or email us if you're interested in switching over. And if you are going to do so, definitely recommend that you do so in the first or 2 weeks before it gets too into the thick of things. But easy way to supplement your bar prep, right? However you're currently doing it, is right here where it says off the main page, get master the subject now. And you can get materials that help you understand each class from Legally Fit, where that's not what we covered today, but we have lectures and materials that will really help you understand the law. Okay, like really break down. And as we see here, like that's the foundation of, again, doing well on all the portions of the exam. So my goal for all of you, that would be for those types of quizzes, you'd be scoring in the 90% and above to really make sure you have that foundation down. Okay, so if anybody has more questions, feel free to reach out. We'll send you guys some links, again, for convenience at the end of this session. So for the rest of the summer, just some quick highlights back to Saffron's question at the beginning of this. What is this? What are we doing? So the reminder for anybody who is now joining us, we'll be doing things like this all summer. We do have our next event just like this, sponsored by BWL and Langston. So again, big shout out to them for hosting these events and sponsoring these events. And that'll be on June 15th. Okay, so look out in your email for the next session. Chances are we're going to be talking about multiple choice in that session, and then also going over, again, where are we at now that we're like in the middle of bar prep. Okay, outside of that, follow us on Instagram. I'll put in the handle in the chat. It's just Legally Fit Student. And a great resource to stay up to date with what we'll be doing, but we'll also be putting out some amazing content for all of those that happen to be on their phone during bar prep, so you can at least still get some studying in. So one of the things that we're introducing this go round on our Instagram over the summer is flashcards. So imagine you're doom scrolling, and then you can just go ahead and get in some practice while you're on the go. Okay, so look out for all that amazing content. Again, ever you have any questions for myself, Legally Fit, for BWL or Langston, we're all here and available for you to be a part of these amazing organizations. And yeah, let me make sure. I think that's pretty much everything on our end. Oh, lastly, we're going to send out a survey at the end of this session. It will do a lot of good for us if you can take about 5 minutes to fill out that survey, so we can learn what you liked, what you didn't like, and we're going to get some feedback on what you would like to see in the next session. So it'd be a good way to participate in what the next content is. And for all those that do the survey, we're going to email you the Legally Fit sample answer for the essay that we just did. So that way you can see detailed, not only what that pre-writing phase will look like, but then also the Legally Fit style of writing, right? And how that looks like with that essay that we just did. Okay, so survey will be all in your emails. If you didn't RSVP, put your email in the chat to make sure you get on that list of receiving the survey at the end of class. Okay, I'll pass it over to Jamila or Sarah. Any last words?
I wanted to thank you all for coming today and for your attention, and just taking the time to invest in yourselves. As you can see, DeAndre is a great teacher and has a lot of great tips, so definitely check him out. I will just say, bragging points for DeAndre, he had a much higher pass rate than the average pass rate in the state of California, so definitely check out Legal Fit, because it was like more than double. So good luck to all of you, and thank you for your time and for being here today. I'll pass it to Jamila in case she has any final words.
Just wanted to say good luck, everyone. And thank you, DeAndre. Excellent job. I won't tell you guys how many years ago it was that I took the bar, but I love the tips, and good luck, everyone.
Awesome. All right, everybody, have a great rest of your Saturday. Good job today. Proud of you all for investing in your success. And I look forward to these tips helping you out a lot along the way. I'll see you guys next time.
Bye, everyone. Have a great weekend. Bye, Sarah. Bye, DeAndre.
See ya.
DeAndre, did you mean talk now after the session, or like you'll contact me later?
Yeah, let me contact you later. So did you put in the chat your email and phone number?
Yeah, I like directly messaged you on chat.
Perfect. So before I close this out, I'll go in there, grab it, write it down, and I'll make sure we reach out to you, man.
Sounds good. Thank you.
All right, take care. Good stuff today.
Thank you.